Hi and welcome to another one of my Photoshop tutorials. So today I want to talk to you about workflows and why you need a workflow when you're editing images. Let's face it, you've done your shoot and you've got a whole load of images on your memory card, download on your computer, and you want to start editing. But editing is quite a time-consuming process. So anything that we can do to make that shorter and more efficient has got to be a good thing. In my studio, I'm shooting every single day and I edit a lot of pictures every week. Okay, you might say, well, don't I have someone who does my editing for me? And yes, I do. But she also uses this same workflow. And I wrapped up my workflow into an action on Photoshop, and that's what I want to show you today. I split my work into three kind of areas, if you like. So what I do first of all is I bring in my raw file using either Adobe Raw or Lightroom, or you might have another program that you use to do that raw conversion. And you can make quite a lot of adjustments in there. So that's my first part of my workflow. The next thing is I bring the image into Photoshop and I kind of do all that editing where we're removing skin blemishes and we're tweaking the skin tones and all those little bits and pieces that really make the image. And that finalizes my master image, if you like. And from there, I can then use my master image and I can go into Lightroom and I can apply loads of presets or filters. I can use some third-party plugins and create all those really artistic things that you want to do with your image. And so that's the third part. Today, I'm just going to concentrate on the first two, show you how we create that master file, ready to then move on to that more artistic and creative part of the process. Okay, so let's crack on, get started. Got a picture in Photoshop here in the raw converter. I'm going to show you what I do with the NEF file, my Nikon NEF file, to get it ready to start editing. Here we go. So here I am in my raw conversion, the Nikon or the Adobe Camera Raw, sorry. And we've got a lot of things that we can set here, so we can adjust our white balance, we can tweak our tint, adjust the exposure up and down if we've made a little bit of a mistake in camera. Lots of different things. So there's a couple of things that I'm going to show you. Okay, first thing is obviously just double check that exposure. That's good. Okay, contrast, I'm really happy with that. Highlights and shadows, they're all good. I'm just going to drop that texture slider down just a little bit. It really helps when you're photographing skin. It just takes the edge off because these days we've got so many pixels in our camera. It just is a little bit unkind on human skin. So we drop that texture and we also drop our clarity down somewhere around about sort of maybe 12, 15 is generally about right. If you go too far, you can see what happens. It goes really weird and horrible. You don't want to do that. Be subtle with it. Keep it around about 15 and that's just going to take the edge off of that skin. We're going to just push that dehaze up very, very slightly. Again, go too far, you'll start to bring in some weird and wonderful effects. So we're just going to bring that in just a little bit. Knock our vibrancy slider up. And I'm going to leave my saturation where it is because I'm going to take care of the saturation towards the end of the process when I'm actually editing it in Photoshop. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. But then what I do is I grab my pen and tablet here. It's just turned off. And I'm going to go up to my adjustment brush, which is over here. Click on my adjustment brush and you can see I've got all of those sliders again, same as I had before when I was in the main part. But what I can do is, for instance, if I just bring that exposure slider up to 0.4, and then I could just come into maybe the side of the body here, just paint on there, and you see the way that lifted up. And now I can move that slider and just adjust that part of the image, just that little tweak. I can do another new adjustment, change my brush here, and I'm just going to tweak that arm and bring some highlights up on the arm just there and just there. Perfect. I'm also thinking maybe the face is a little darker, a little light at the moment, so I'm just going to make it a little darker. So I've got a new adjustment, minus 25 on the exposure, and I'm just going to just take that down. Just a little bit of tweak, and we can adjust it if we want to, just like so. And what we're actually doing is we're dodging and shading, really. It's just another way of dodging our shading, our image, a little bit like we did in the old days in the darkroom. We can do it here in the Adobe Raw converter and just give the image just a little bit of a tweak here and there where we want it. Now I'm really going to go to town here a little bit Going to go up to around about +1. See where we've got these black sheets here, all these lovely folds and highlights, and we're just going to paint on there and just going to bring some of those out. Fabulous. A little bit here. Just going to knock that down just a little bit, but then I'm going to bring my highlights up. Yep. And maybe just drop my blacks down a smidgen. Contrast up a little bit. Exposure. There we go. And we can really see those silky highlights and things really just coming out quite nicely just there now. Okay, one more adjustment before we move on, because we could be here all day. We're just going to take those down, knock the exposure down. Again, just about 0.15, maybe a little bit more, down on my brush size. And I'm just going to just take this highlight off the arm just here. Okay, I'm just going to go to the highlight slider and just take that down just a little bit. Perfect. For some reason I've still got my blacks there, so I'm just going to zero those out. Cool, okay, I'm really happy with that. That's looking nice. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to click open image, and that's going to open it up into Photoshop proper, as it were. So there we go, it's looking good. Okay, so the first part of my workflow is, as with most people, you just go through and look at removing any kind of skin blemishes. We can see our model's got a few little tiny little spots here, maybe a little stubble under the arm, a couple of little veins on the head here. Don't know if you can see that, just zoom in. You can see some veins on here, little spots just over here. So we're just going to go ahead and get rid of those before we move on to our action. I'm not going to bore you with this whole thing because this isn't an exercise in healing brush and blemish removal. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that and save that lesson for another day. So I'm going to speed this process up. So I'll bring you back in a moment. Cool, so there we go. That's got rid of most of the little skin blemishes, the little bits and pieces that we don't want to see on our final image. So that's what I would call the sort of the retouching, if you want to label it as such. So the next thing that I do now is I move over into my actions palette, and this is the bit that really starts to save the time. So over here on my actions palette, I have an action called workflow. And a group, sorry, called workflow. And within that workflow folder, I have 4 actions. You can see those. One called the full Monty. That's the thing that's going to do everything, hence the name. Then we have the soft focus filter, and then I have 2 crops. So one is for a viewway image, and one is for an upright image. Okay, so if I open that full Monty workflow up, I'm just going to expand that down a little bit. You can see it's got several steps in here. So let me just very briefly take you through those and explain what each one does before I actually do it. So the first thing is that we convert the image into, just open that up, into an sRGB profile. So 99% of your images, you'll be wanting to use an sRGB profile. That is the best profile to use for images displaying on the internet. Mostly if you're using a processing lab or printing lab to print your images, they'll ask you to convert your images to an sRGB profile, and that's going to enable you to get the best color and the best color matching that you possibly can. So I know that if I assign this an sRGB profile, anytime I print this image out, it's going to look like the image that's on the screen. So after we run the action and it converts the image to the sRGB profile, it will actually then do the proof setup, which is effectively setting the screen up to show me that sRGB profile. So we've got our sRGB profile in the image, and then we're setting the screen up so that we can see that sRGB profile, and we know exactly how the end image is going to look. The next thing is it's going to bring me a levels box up so I can do any little tweaks to the highlights, the blacks or the midpoints. Then it's going to play another action within the action that I'm in. So let me stop there, run the action, and then we'll pick it up at that soft focus filter. So full Monty action, there we go, click play. Boom, there we go. It's done the convert to profile, it's done the proof setup, it's brought me a levels box up. I've just got a little tweak on the levels, just on the whites there, just to enable me to then step in and make any changes. So there probably isn't too much that I want to do here because I got everything pretty close in the raw converter when I brought in the raw file. So maybe I've just tweaked the midtones down just a tiny smidge there. So you can obviously adjust the blacks if you want to, whites if you want to, and then obviously the midtones. So we've tweaked the midtones there. So click OK, and then there's a dialog box that comes up that says repaint softening filter now. Okay, continue or stop. We're going to stop. Click stop. What's happened is the action has run this play action soft focus. Let me just bring that up so you can see it. Play action soft focus filter offset workflow. Okay, so that is this action just here. Okay, and that does a whole heap of stuff. Let me just scroll down there for you. So our soft focus filter does all of this stuff. I'm not going to go into that now. We'd be there for an hour, but suffice to say it does an awful lot of stuff. But the end result is that if we look at our layers palette, we have a new layer, and that is our soft focus layer. Okay, I'm not going to go too deep into that at the time being, because if you actually watch one of my other videos on skin softening, all of that is explained in there and how that works. So suffice to say for now, we've got our skin softening layer built in to our workflow action, and it's run that for us. So we've got our layer mask there as well, which we're going to need right now. The layer mask is black at the moment. Our skin softening layer is hidden by the layer mask. I'm going to come over to here. I'm going to set white as my foreground color. Come up, select my brush, and my brush, I'm going to set my opacity 64% at the moment. I'm happy with that. Flow at 16%, smoothing 10%. Let's go with those values for now and see how we get on. So we're just going to change our brush size, and we're going to paint white onto that layer mask, and that is going to reveal the skin softening layer underneath it. As I say, go ahead and check out my skin softening tutorial video, because it goes into this in a bit more detail, and you'll get the idea about how the skin softening filter works. And it's just great at giving really nice soft skin to your image. I'm going to go ahead and paint this on, speed it up so you don't have to sit through this whole thing, and I'll get you back in a moment. And we're back. Okay, so I've painted on the skin softening filter. If I just hit my slash key here, you should be able to see, oops, sorry, there we go. You can see where I've actually painted it on and not painted it on, okay? And it's given the skin a nice soft appearance. I'm just gonna zoom in very quickly. I'm gonna turn it off, so hopefully you can see the difference. Off, on, off, on. Very subtle, but just takes the edge off of those horrible 24 million pixels or however many we have now. Okay, so we've done our skin softening. I can go back to my action, and we can see that it has played the soft focus filter. Then there was our stop, and then we rejoin the action just here with the flatten image command. I'm going to click play again. It's flattened the image, it's combined those layers together. So the background layer and the soft focus layer have been merged together into one. And my workflow has now brought me a crop box up. Now if you're working with Photoshop CC, or I believe from CS6, I may be wrong on that, but you can check. You can use conditional actions in Photoshop. And that means that the action will determine if your image is a viewway or an upright, and it will bring the correct format of crop box up for you. so you don't have to sort of turn it around and turn it back again and anything like that. So you can see I've got two crops here, a view crop and an upright crop. It's selected the right one for me because I've got as I say, a landscape viewway picture there. My default on the crop is 12 inches by 8 inches at 300 pixels per inch. You can obviously make your own sizes according to what you do mostly. For me, I mostly print 12 inch by 8 inch prints, so that's what I have set. I can just come in, I can just drag that in a little bit, drag that in a little bit. That's about perfect, I think. Cool, hit enter to commit that crop. And the next thing in my action over here is it's played the color balance part of the action. So it's brought me a color balance box up, and my default in here is +2 on the red and +2 on the yellow, or -2 on the blue, I should say. And all that does, it just adds a bit of warmth into the skin tones and just gives the picture a little bit more of a nice warm feel. You can obviously adjust those as much as you like. Don't go too crazy with it. You can obviously adjust the shadows and the highlights. Again, all those things, very subjective, it's up to you. I've just made a tiny little tweak just to warm those up. I like that. Click OK. Next thing in my workflow action, hue saturation. It's brought it up automatically for me. All I have to do then is decide how much how much saturation I want in there. So I'm just going to pop that up to maybe +2 or +3. Again, I don't want to go too mad. I want this image to be quite natural. And yeah, great. Okay, click OK. So the action has stopped. It's brought up a dialog box. Any final adjustments should be made now. So I can either click continue and it will take me on to the next part of the action, which is the last part, which is the unsharp mask, or I can click stop and I could make any other changes that I might want to do. I can't see any other changes that I particularly want on there. Happy with that so far. I'll go back to my action over here and click play, and it'll run the next part, or the last part of the action, which is the unsharp mask. Now this is a bit of a catch-all unsharp mask, okay? You would normally want to go in and sharpen different areas of the image slightly differently, so the eyes and the lips maybe a bit more than the skin and what have you. But as a kind of catch-all scenario for most images, this is kind of what I use. If I do want to go in and do something a little bit more specific, I'll do that separately. So for the time being, I'm just going to take this down to around about 80% at around about 1.6. Why those values? Well, I just know by experience that for my image, a 12 by 8 image at 300 dpi, pictures of skin, portraits of people, those numbers kind of work quite well for me. So 83%, 80%, somewhere around about there, 1.5, 1.6, 1.7 pixels. That's the numbers that I generally use, and they work for me. I'm going to click OK. I'm done. My workflow is complete. The very last thing that I would do to just finish it off is save it as, and then you would save it as a Photoshop file, a PSD, because that is an uncompressed file. You haven't thrown any information away that you would do if you were saving it as a JPEG. So save it as a PSD. That's your master file. That's your image finished, if you like. I'm not going to save that there. I need to save that in a different location. Once you've saved that, that is your master file, okay? That's there forever. You don't need to go back and change that. What you can do is you can create a copy of it, and then you can bring that copy into Lightroom, and then you can start applying your presets, you can start applying filters, you can do the creative stuff, and move on from there and make as many copies and edits of that as you want. But what you've got here, by following that workflow, is you've got your master copy, and that's the one that you need to keep, the one you need to save, ready to go ahead and create all your other versions from there. So there we go. I hope that's useful. You can download the action, the workflow action here, my full Monty, in the members section of my website, leeperkins.com. And yeah, download it, and I hope it works for you. Thanks for watching, and see you again next time.